Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Swallowed Star 2 Land of Origin Part 118 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. Luo Feng looked at the endless winding serpent before him, its cold eyes fixed on Luo Feng, filled with wrath. Stop! Luo Feng looked at the other, smiling indifferently. Infinite Snake Ancestor, I haven't done much killing recently. The Infinite Snake Ancestor glared at Luo Feng, unwilling to accept the fact, yet it knew clearly, this newly ascended cultivator lord has become a terrifying enemy to the innate primordial camp. This formidable foe is incredibly powerful, and it's rising rapidly. According to their predictions, this Lord Luo Feng might surpass the Starlight Lord in the future, becoming the greatest threat. Lord Luo Feng, the Infinite Snake Ancestor spoke, its voice thunderous. In the recent 100 epochs, you have intercepted and killed all world-level primordial life forms devouring the source world. More than 7,000 world-level primordial have died by your hands. You indeed haven't continued killing recently, and that's because those world-level primordial beings are scared, no longer daring to devour source world resources. That's a good thing. Luo Feng nodded slightly. Innate primordial life, born to break free from the braided cage. The endless primordial space nurtures a variety of resources that can facilitate their growth. They fundamentally don't need to devour the source world origin. Without devouring the source world origin, innate primordial life can still grow stronger and become ancestors. Luo Feng smiled, looking at the Infinite Snake Ancestor. In this way, innate primordial life and source world creatures need not become mortal enemies. The Infinite Snake Ancestor paused. Not devouring? Innate primordial life comprises various species. Some species benefit greatly from devouring the source world origin, while others gain little effect. Some species have no effect at all. However, the infinite race is deemed the species with the best effect from devouring the source world origin. Making them abandon the source world origin would diminish their hope of birthing ancestors by 70 to 80%. This cannot be tolerated. Impossible. The Infinite Snake Ancestor roared in anger. The source world is scattered across the endless primordial space. Why should I abandon this resource? Luo Feng. The Infinite Snake Ancestor stared at Luo Feng. You should know, most innate primordial life species need the source world origin. By blocking this, you're turning against all innate primordial life. You don't represent all innate primordial life. Luo Feng looked at it. Since you aim to devour the source world, being counterattacked by source world creatures is only right. To devour the source world, only to be counterslaughtered by source world creatures. This is causality. I remind you, the Infinite Snake Ancestor said, preventing many species from devouring source world resources. Short-term patience can be endured, but over time, it will trigger new wars. Then the flames of war will spread across your cultivated territory, many world groups will fall, and these consequences you must also bear. Infinite Snake Ancestor, rest assured. Luo Feng looked at it. I promise you, once war begins, the fires will certainly spread to your territory. In the last war, I had just become a lord. My means were average, only managing to kill a few ancestors. Luo Feng grinned. Recently, I've made a breakthrough in strength. If another war starts, I'll definitely bring you a bigger surprise. The Infinite Snake Ancestor immediately thought of it. Thought of that terrifying origin great destruction. Luo Feng's current strength has clearly further advanced. His means would definitely be more troublesome. Your cultivator camp just needs to bear the consequences. The Infinite Snake Ancestor left coldly, then its figure turned to void, completely vanished without a trace. Luo Feng stood in mid-air. Start another war? Do you have that capability? Luo Feng mockingly thought. Not looking down on the Infinite Snake Ancestor, but the cultivator camp and innate primordial camp have been at odds for too long. Both sides know each other too well. Infinite Snake Ancestor, indeed the most influential in the innate primordial camp, yet still limited. First, those ancestors of species not much needing source world resources, unwilling to start a war. Those weaker in power, at risk of dying, are also unwilling to start a war. The faction of the giant god emperor doesn't like war either. How many ancestors can the Infinite Snake Ancestor rally for battle? One must know, all 8 cultivator lords are undying and imperishable. Among the innate primordial camp, those ancestors, only 5 are undying and imperishable, others over 100 may face death. Without sufficient advantage, without sufficient safety, how many would be willing to fight? Merely intercepting thousands of world-level primordials is enough to start a war. Luo Feng doesn't believe, nor does the Starlight Lord, who can observe countless future possibilities. The innate primordial camp, the 9 emperors' avatars gathered. Luo Feng is stronger. Once war breaks out, the casualties are unpredictable. Initial said. Luo Feng has not wantonly slaughtered. As long as source world origin is not devoured, there's no conflict. The giant god emperor remarked, "Infinite, I think your infinite race overestimates the source world origin. Occasionally abstaining from the source world origin might better assist the evolution of the life core. Having insufficient strength and forcibly starting a war would only be more disgraceful," the black-tide ancestor said indifferently. The infinite snake ancestor looked at the scene before it. Even among the 9 emperors, those willing to start a war are few because their interests aren't affected. Should we just let this Luo Feng oppress us? The silent extinction ancestor spoke, longing for the outbreak of war, seeing its old friend infinite ancestor already undying and imperishable, while it was still lacking. It's not exactly oppression, the infinite ancestor smiled. The 2 camps often have conflicts. Innate primordial life also venture into the cultivator territory to seize resources. What Luo Feng has done is much more restrained than the Starlight Lord. Once, the Starlight Lord, to collect the innate primordial bloodline, killed world-level primordial life numbering several tens of thousands. At least Luo Feng is reasonable, targeting only world-level primordial life devouring the source world. Starlight was unreasonable, just to gather the bloodline, killing each one outright. "It's not suitable to start a war," suddenly spoke the Mother of Spacetime. The other 8 looked at the Mother of Spacetime. Although the Mother of Spacetime couldn't observe countless timelines of the future like Starlight, she could still see glimpses of a few futures. The other 8 took the opinions of the Mother of Spacetime very seriously. "I can see it," the Mother of Spacetime said. "The outcome of starting a war is not favorable for our innate primordial camp." The Mother of Spacetime foresaw a war even more brutal than the last. The cultivator camp might pay a certain price, but the price the innate primordial camp would pay would be much more painful. "Let's wait for now," said the inference fire ancestor. "Isn't Luo Feng exploring the abyss of destruction? The deeper he probes, the greater the danger will be. He will also reveal more of his strength. Once we clearly understand his power, even if war breaks out in the future, we will be better prepared." "All right, let's wait for now." The infinite snake ancestor also realized that pushing wasn't possible, and relative to other lords, Luo Feng's strength was indeed a mystery. Understanding the enemy and oneself leads to better responses. Demon Ruins and Shao are both belligerent. Facing off against them, Luo Feng is sure to reveal more of his power. Inference fire ancestor looked forward to it. Time flew by, and it had been 500 epochs since Luo Feng intercepted and devoured the world-level primordial life of the source world. In these 500 epochs, no further world-level primordials dared to consume source world resources, not even the ancestors did so temporarily. Some newly ascended weaker ancestors might still gain some benefits from consuming the source world origin. However, as their strength grew, the effects of the source world origin would become increasingly negligible. For those at the level of the silent extinction ancestor, consuming more source world origin was already useless. Hua 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 tilde 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 tilde. Beside the origin continent origin world, within the mysterious land of the Blood Crane territory, the tides of the endless Blood Sea surged. On an island in the depths of the Blood Sea, Luo Feng, draped in blood-red robes, with black hair and clad in black, sat cross-legged. 500 epochs, I've seen all the source worlds. Luo Feng's eyes were complex. Over these 500 epochs, numerous avatars had roamed various places, observing the history of each source world. Not only outside the cultivator territory, but even all the source worlds within the cultivator territory, Luo Feng had seen them all. Those source worlds within the territory could be divided into 2 eras, the era of the Lord's rule and the era of the innate primordial's rule. In the era of the innate primordial's rule, the source worlds within the territory were equally tragic, left to be devoured at will. The rise of the lords, guarding each region, changed the situation. Only then did countless source worlds have hope. But all the historical memories of countless source worlds resided within Luo Feng's heart. These memories, time and again, tempered Luo Feng's inner heart, forging that heart of destruction. The sheer volume of these memories was enormous. After all, they encompassed countless civilizations and the lifetimes of innumerable creatures, yet Luo Feng, as a lord, could still perfectly integrate all the historical memories. The experiences of a creature determine its soul. These incomparably heavy historical memories also influenced Luo Feng's heart. The more one loves this world, loves this multitude of life, the more they need an unwavering heart of destruction. Because, being merciful to those innate primordial lives that devour the source worlds is to be cruel to the cultivator species. The greatest mercy to the cultivator species is to destroy all those who devour the source worlds. Anyone who devours the source worlds, who devours the life of the source worlds, will be killed without mercy. Not a single one left. With the influence Luo Feng now holds, he can temporarily impact those innate primordials' consumption of the source worlds, but over time, those innate primordial species wouldn't endure it. At that time, the innate primordial camp might unite with the Ice Peak camp and weaker forces altogether. Destroying all source world devourers, this goal is immense. Even if I comprehend the primordial blade path, it may not be achievable. But I, Luo Feng, am willing to, in the endless epochs to come, act like the foolish old man who moved mountains, and do it step by step. Through this interception of a world-level primordial life, Luo Feng understood a principle: action leads to results. With strength comes results. As long as he acts, he will indirectly shelter countless creatures. Luo Feng smiled. The heart of destruction is formed, the next step is to harmonize heart and Tao, to completely integrate. Luo Feng immediately attempted, letting the heart of destruction govern the entire primordial blade path, as countless mysteries of the blade path began to integrate into one. Luo Feng's aura began to transform, resembling a destructively sharp blade, the aura of destruction far more terrifying than Jin and Kafu. As the highest level life form in the infinite primordial space, Luo Feng's thought process speed far exceeds that of the past. With sufficient accumulation in destruction and life perception, his heart and Tao aligned, and in just one day, he created the first version of the primordial blade path. My primordial blade path takes the Great Destruction System as its core, pursuing ultimate power. He needs to perfectly combine the primordial life and death Tao with the primordial blade path. Hence, he must consider the strongest advantage of the primordial life and death Tao, infinite energy, to make the strong stronger, which is the best combination. With infinite energy, combined with extreme power, it can threaten those ancestors with tenacious life force. Let's give it a try. Luo Feng sat cross-legged on an island deep within the Blood Crane territory. With a casual wave of his hand, his palm became like a blade, and a terrifying blade light erupted, tearing through endless time and space, splitting the vast blood sea in two. This first version of the primordial blade path has too many flaws. Luo Feng frowned. It's only good at close-range energy locking. If the distance is far, it lacks the assurance of locking on. Reaching the level of a lord or ancestor, a single movement technique can cover quite a distance. It requires ensuring absolute locking within a certain range to be a sufficient threat to the enemy. Let's try the power of the origin destruction. Luo Feng waved his hand, and countless brilliant stars flew out. A total of 360 million origin stars floated in the air, forming a formation exuding endless destruction aura, which is a weakened version of the origin Great Destruction. The control is more perfect now, and it can accurately target the locked area. Luo Feng nodded slightly. Boom! Watching the incredibly splendid destruction scene, the glow reflected on Luo Feng's face made it much brighter. He frowned slightly. This weakened version of Origin Great Destruction only improves power by 50%. He didn't need to try to know that the more challenging 1.8 billion Origin Stars version wouldn't enhance the power much either. This version has too many flaws. Luo Feng shook his head lightly. This is far from the primordial blade path he envisioned. Luo Feng sat cross-legged on the island deep within Blood Crane territory, deducing one version of the primordial blade path after another. His insight, comprehension, and thinking abilities were too terrifying, and unconsciously, he had already created 10,938,103,329 versions of the primordial blade path without feeling tired. Back then, Luo Feng tried creating the primordial life and death Dao more than 30 million times before breaking out of the cage, feeling like he had exhausted all possibilities, and his soul was almost empty. Now he easily surpassed 100 billion times. I've tried every possibility. Luo Feng was very calm. The creation of 100 billion times consumed him less than 30 eras. Among them, 7 versions are the most outstanding. But there's still a bit left to succeed. Only by succeeding can the Tao be eternal and indestructible, becoming part of a Lord's life. The blade path is ultimately used for killing enemies. Let's sharpen the blade further in actual combat. Luo Feng thought. His aura rapidly weakened, while the aura of Luo Feng's avatar, closed in the 19th layer of the Abyss of Destruction, rapidly increased. The 19th layer of the Abyss of Destruction. This avatar of Luo Feng reached peak state before opening his eyes. Elder Brother Yuan. Luo Feng walked out of the secluded cave mansion, speaking through transmitted sound. I'm ready to head to the next layer. Yuan's avatar condensed and appeared nearby. Preparing to break through layer by layer? Yuan laughed. Yes. Luo Feng nodded. First, I'll try challenging all opponents. Relying on the primordial life and death Tao and the highest level of destruction power, breaking power, Luo Feng was confident in battling Shoju. With the more perfected 7 versions of the primordial blade path, Luo Feng was even more confident. These opponents are the whetstones for his blade. Then I'll watch with anticipation. Yuan seemed expectant. Luo Feng nodded, taking a step through layers of time and space, heading to the deeper 20th layer destruction world. Yuan watched him leave. According to Starlight's observations, Luo Feng is perfecting his second primordial level Tao. Yuan observed, once he breaks through, our cultivator camp's strength can be greatly enhanced. Luo Feng also regards the countless source worlds outside the territory as his kin. Yuan highly appreciated the behavior Luo Feng displayed over the past 500 eras. Intercepting and devouring world-level primordial life forms from the source worlds represented Luo Feng's acknowledgement of the countless source worlds outside the territory. As the first lord of the cultivator camp, the entire cultivator camp inherently had no territory. It was with the rise of one lord after another that the territory continuously expanded until reaching the current 3,600 world groups. In Yuan's eyes, the territory will expand. All creatures of the source worlds are within the range of the recognized cultivator tribe. I will expand the territory in the future, and Luo Feng should agree. Yuan thought, then dispersed his avatar, continuing to focus on cultivation, carefully perfecting his origin system of the primordial rules operation path. Asterisk 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 asterisk. The 20th layer of the Abyss of Destruction, the cold wind howled, sweeping everywhere. Luo Feng descended onto the vast icy ground, seeing the figure looming in the distance like an ice mountain, Ice Peak Ancestor. The Ice Peak Ancestor slowly opened his eyes, standing as if integrated with the entire destruction world. Ice Peak Ancestor, Luo Feng spoke. You've finally come, Ice Peak Ancestor smiled and said, how do you need me to cooperate with you? Based on Ice Peak Ancestor's research, cooperation can maintain face. If not, Luo Feng might have to use force, which would be even more embarrassing. With the other party being so friendly, Luo Feng couldn't be too excessive. I kindly ask the Ice Peak Ancestor to help and join all world envoys to deal with me. Luo Feng requested. Ha ha ha, if I join hands with all the envoys, it's not so easy to handle. Ice Peak Ancestor laughed heartily, be careful. Then the Ice Peak Ancestor extended his hand. As his palm stretched out, it rapidly enlarged, the surface of the palm spreading endless cold, causing the hand to continuously extend and expand. Meanwhile, in the endless cold, 120 black figures condensed. Here it comes. After the Ice Peak Ancestor enlarged his palm, it was as big as half the world. Moreover, the gigantic palm seemed to be one with the entire Iceland, exerting an oppressive power that surprised Luo Feng. Ice Peak ancestor, you can indeed rival the elder brother Yuan. Luo Feng marveled in his heart. Unlike Yuan's formation, mysterious and unparalleled, Ice Peak ancestor, who can be called a more perfect Wulan, possesses a body comparable to Wulan's powerful body. And his attack methods are even stronger. Bang tilde 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 tilde. The incredibly large palm merged with the earth, where 120 twisting black shadows surrounded Luo Feng. Ice Peak ancestor was slightly surprised. He could feel the pain in his palm. Luo Feng remained standing there, unmoved. He forcefully withstood the striking of the gigantic palm and the encirclement by 120 world envoys. Because in the Mountain of Destruction, he had seen all the mysteries of the 20 levels of destructive power, now just slightly sensing the world envoy's siege, he could see through it all. This body of Luo Feng is like a blade. Ice Peak ancestor realized that his palm seemed to have struck a knife's edge, already showing injuries. Within Luo Feng, 1,800,000,000 origin energy circulated, making him appear as a terrifying blade. Suddenly, Luo Feng moved. A dazzling and brilliant blade light forcefully pierced through the Ice Peak ancestor's palm, creating a gap in the massive icy palm, and the blade light flew out along the gap, dazzling and brilliant as it cut onto the Ice Peak ancestor's chest, leaving cracks on his chest surface. But these cracks were insignificant to Ice Peak ancestor. The ice cracks on his body surface rapidly healed, with virtually no energy loss. Such a terrifying body. Luo Feng's mind stirred, the dazzling brilliant blade light turned silently, already disappeared without a trace. The blade light was hidden in the dark. Invisible, undetectable, it kills all vitality. Hiss 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 tilde tilde tilde. The ice on the Ice Peak ancestor's body surface turned into flying ash, led into annihilation. Clearly, no blade light was detected, yet the vast body of Ice Peak ancestor was losing some of its power and vitality. Without vitality, naturally, it leads to extinction. Previously, relying only on the primordial life and death Tao, Luo Feng's life-cutting technique had relatively low impact on the ancestors, and he himself didn't prioritize it enough. But when combined with the destructive killing intent, it produced a remarkable effect against Ice Peak ancestor. This invisible knife deals greater damage to me. Ice Peak ancestor was also slightly surprised. A figure gathered in the distance, precisely Luo Feng's figure. Luo Feng stood there, somewhat puzzled. The combination of two Daos indeed greatly enhances the life-cutting effect. All life needs vitality. Without vitality, it means death. Not targeting matter, nor some special energy, just vitality. It makes no noise killing the enemy, but it's very effective. The encounter between Luo Feng and Ice Peak ancestor made him realize. The combination of two primordial Daos elevated the power of life-cutting. This seemingly insignificant, noiseless technique has great potential. Origin Great Destruction pursues the utmost power to destroy an enemy with extreme power. Life-cutting, however, is very suitable for my other path. I need to improve this path properly. My attention to it has been inadequate. Luo Feng stood there, various plans to improve it quickly emerged in his mind. It's difficult to fully understand the strengths and weaknesses of the Tao while secluded in enlightenment. But during combat, it becomes clearer. Lord Luo Feng, do you want to continue? Ice Peak ancestor remained cordial. No need, I'm preparing to move to the next level, Luo Feng said with a smile. Move to the next level? Ice Peak ancestor was astonished. According to Luo Feng's previous habits, he would always let the world envoys siege for 1 or 2 eras. It's too fast now. Luo Feng took a step and had already gone deeper into the destruction world. The skirmish between Luo Feng and Ice Peak ancestor, though brief, also attracted the attention of ancient beings in the endless primordial space. From this battle, they could see that the proud Ice Peak ancestor had no advantage in the encounter with Luo Feng, even somewhat falling behind. Lord Luo Feng's strength, after all, is comparable to Shao Ju. Ice Peak ancestor being unable to match is normal. This confrontation was within everyone's expectation. If Ice Peak ancestor won, that would surprise everyone. In the 21st layer of the abyss of destruction, Infinite Snake Ancestor was also watching. So fast it came. Infinite Snake Ancestor watched the silhouette of the black-haired man descending into this layer of destruction world, a bit confused. It came too quickly. It originally thought Luo Feng would stay on the 20th layer for 1 or 2 eras. Luo Feng looked at the Infinite Snake Ancestor, full of battle intent. Compared to the defensively robust and simple attacks of Ice Peak Ancestor, Luo Feng was more interested in Infinite Snake Ancestor. Infinite Snake Ancestor, capable of changing shape and space, mysterious and intriguing, was more suitable for testing various blade techniques. Hitting Ice Peak Ancestor was as it should be. Because Ice Peak Ancestor doesn't dodge. To strike Infinite Snake Ancestor, that proves the prowess of the blade technique. Infinite Snake Ancestor, please give it your all. Luo Feng looked at it. I cooperate with you. Infinite Snake Ancestor sneered. It could see that Luo Feng was cultivating. As an adversary and the head of the 9 emperors of the innate primordial camp, it had its pride and could not cooperate with Luo Feng in cultivation. Luo Feng gently shook his head. Then I'll have to force it. The Infinite Snake Ancestor was confident that, with the support of the infinite world, it could achieve complete void transformation. In an absolute void state, no material energy could harm it in the slightest. Of course, in that state, it couldn't harm the enemy either. This absolute void state is a unique ability of the mysterious land of the infinite world. With this ability, the Infinite Snake Ancestor was fearless in the face of Luo Feng. Boom! Boom! Neither the Infinite Snake Ancestor nor Luo Feng held back, both went all out right from the start. This layer of Destroyer World instantly turned into a void maze, with the Infinite Snake Ancestor and the entire void maze as one, moving stealthily, disappearing at will, appearing at will, attacking Luo Feng crazily. This battle attracted more attention in the entire infinite primordial space. Everyone knows that the Cultivator Camp and the Innate Primordial Camp are mortal enemies and have fought for too long. Land of Origin. Yuan, Jin, Wulan, Minghuang, Nai Jiyu, Starlight, Mo Man, the 7 lords were also watching the battle. They were very concerned about their companion Luo Feng's growth. With Luo Feng's speed of breaking laws with force, they predicted it wouldn't be long before Luo Feng should grasp the 2nd primordial level Dao. They all looked forward to that moment. Although Luo Feng's blade technique is fierce and violent, the Infinite Snake Ancestor is too elusive. Luo Feng's techniques can't touch it. Ming Huang frowned and watched. Luo Feng has unleashed over 100 blades, each one terrifying, yet none can touch the Infinite Snake Ancestor. Wulan also shook his head lightly. Throughout the infinite primordial space, in terms of void mastery, the Infinite Great Serpent is second only to Starlight. The Starlight Lord nodded in acknowledgement. The Infinite Snake Ancestor hasn't even exhibited the Absolute Void ability yet. With Void Control alone, it's avoiding all of Luo Feng's attacks. Under Void Control, wherever Luo Feng's blade light fell, it would veer off too far. Yuan and the others' eyes brightened. Luo Feng's blade technique changed, its power greatly reduced, but each blade flew out with a sort of spirituality, swiftly carving bizarre arcs, piercing through layers of space-time barriers, hitting the Infinite Snake Ancestor hidden within the void maze. Each blade must hit. There was nowhere to hide. No matter how formidable the void mastery of the Infinite Snake Ancestor was, it couldn't escape. Absolute hit? Yuan laughed. Ming Huang, Jin, and Mo Man all nodded, as all 3 possessed the ability of absolute hit. Luo Feng is still relatively unskilled. To maintain absolute hit, the power of each blade cannot be too strong. Jin laughed. He should learn from me. Luo Feng's each blade isn't considered powerful, but he strikes swiftly. Mo Man exclaimed. Indeed. Dense and intertwined blade lights all flew with spirituality, dividing into several streams, ultimately piercing through space-time barriers, landing on the body of the Infinite Snake Ancestor. The series of attack from the massive amount of blade lights caused the Infinite Snake Ancestor's body to deplete rapidly, needing the energy supply from this layer of Destroyer World to maintain its pinnacle state. HMPH. The Infinite Snake Ancestor disdained relying on the Destroyer World energy supply. After all, In normal external environments, it's impossible to receive such abundant energy supply. It began to exhibit absolute void transformation. When the river-like abundance of blade lights from Luo Feng fell on the infinite snake ancestor, it completely voided, receiving not the slightest damage. It doesn't mean you can harm the opponent. Yuan watched, just like the initial ancestor allowing the enemy to attack, the enemy could hit, but couldn't threaten the initial ancestor in the least. The absolute void of the infinite ancestor, although not as impeccable as the initial ancestor, still ranked among the foremost in difficulty. Nothing can be done. Ming Huang shook his head. All of Luo Feng's techniques can't threaten the infinite snake ancestor. Nai Jiyu watched. At this moment, Luo Feng wielded his blade with ferocity, roaring through the destroyer world. He even deployed a blade formation, constituted of 15 terrifying blade lights, obliterating every corner of the destroyer world. Yet the absolute void infinite snake ancestor effortlessly regarded everything, occasionally seizing moments to attack stealthily. Absolute hit can threaten most ancestors, but with some ancestors, hitting them is useless. Luo Feng tested his techniques on the infinite snake ancestor, gradually perfecting his primordial blade path during the experiment. Suddenly, Luo Feng swung his blade. This time as the blade swung, no blade light could be seen, undetectable. The absolutely void infinite snake ancestor's body, suddenly some scales silently vanished, leaving the infinite ancestor startled. The life severing is effective. Luo Feng's eyes brightened. Not severing the physical body, not severing the soul, only severing the vitality. This was something Luo Feng could do after mastering the primordial life and death Tao. Shhhh. Luo Feng stood still, surge of power on the surface of his body. At once hundreds of life-severing blade lights burst forth. These blade lights were undetectable, only severing vitality. The snake scales on the surface of the infinite snake ancestor began to vanish more and more, even muscles started to vanish. How can this be? The infinite snake ancestor was somewhat panicked. Under the cover of the void maze, with absolute void added, it still got injured? This scene shocked many ancestors in their hearts. Absolutely cannot act alone, the true body appears in front of Luo Feng. Although every ancestor has tough life force and has developed numerous life-saving secret techniques, Luo Feng's current methods are clearly much more terrifying, and they dare not gamble. If the gamble is lost, then it's complete death. Because of the power of Origin Great Destruction previously, I centered the primordial blade path around the Great Destruction system, and there's no mistake in that. But I underestimated the role of life cutting. This is a technique gained after mastering the primordial life and death Tao. And when first becoming a lord, Luo Feng's means of killing were relatively weak, and the life-cutting effect hadn't truly manifested, only suitable for bullying some world-level primordial life. But with the gradually perfected primordial blade path, greatly increasing the power of the life-cutting technique, life-cutting revealed its dreadful nature. It is an unavoidable technique. Omnipresent? Absolute void? As long as it is life, there's no escape from the life-cutting technique. This technique follows the life force transmission but limits the energy ceiling, Luo Feng pondered. Life force sensing is like a passageway. It can transmit blade light, but this passageway has a limit to the energy it can bear. This limit is determined by Luo Feng's mastery of life force, as he is already the highest in achievements related to life in the endless primordial space. This limit cannot be improved anymore. Can't improve the energy ceiling, then find ways to increase the speed of striking, research blade technique intricacies, and continue enhancing the power, Luo Feng thought. In the future, once the blade path reaches perfection, the power can certainly rise again. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Luo Feng kept pondering while also trying out variations of the blade technique. Such a worthy opponent, of course, deserves to test all hypothesized techniques to the fullest. How is it possible? The absolute void infinite snake ancestor, I can't harm it either. Jin looked incredulous. How can Luo Feng harm it? In terms of destruction achievements, he was much stronger. It's the life force. The Golden Lord also had considerable accumulation in life matters and quickly realized this point. Merely following life force sensing, he can unleash blade light to cut life force. Cut life force? How is life force cut? Jin could understand life force sensing and life lock, but couldn't comprehend how cutting life force was achieved, as it far exceeded his life's accumulated knowledge. Life force can be cut. Among the three lords who escaped from the Blood Crane territory, the Blood Lord grasped the highest level life power, blood power, also very strong in life force mastery. He found it hard to understand at this moment. Through life force sensing, I can barely transmit a sliver of energy, maybe severely injure world-level primordial life. But that sliver of weak energy, for an ancestor of the same level, it's not worth mentioning at all. The deeper the understanding of life, the more one realizes the difficulty of this technique. The combination of the two Taos is beginning to show its power. Starlight watched this scene with delight. Life and destruction, the combination of these two Taos, is most adept at destroying life. Starlight had observed countless future timelines long ago. The combination of life and destruction, these two primordial level Taos, complementing each other, poses a terrifying threat. He had long believed that Luo Feng would be the most terrifying existence in future battles, the most core figure on the front battlefield of their cultivator camp. Luo Feng's blade would be the sharpest weapon in the entire cultivator camp, slashing through all obstacles. The second Tao is gradually forming, it's getting close, getting close. Starlight's eyes also saw the future. He saw it. Luo Feng's primordial blade path was on the verge of forming at any moment. All other methods cannot threaten the infinite snake ancestor, only a trace of life force sensing can still deploy the life-cutting technique. Luo Feng repeatedly uses it. The infinite snake ancestor, with unlimited world power in support, is also desperately blocking, even striving to conceal its life force. An excellent opponent forces Luo Feng to continuously perfect the life-cutting technique. The gradual perfecting of the life-cutting technique also makes the overall primordial blade path more perfected. But gradually, the infinite snake ancestor brings no challenge anymore. Its evasive abilities now completely familiar to Luo Feng. Infinite snake ancestor, release the world envoys. Luo Feng spoke. You want me to cooperate? The infinite snake ancestor sneered. Though this life-cutting can continuously dissolve its body, if external, it would force it into a sorry retreat. But in the destruction world, it can absorb energy to maintain at the pinnacle. HMPH. Luo Feng snorted coldly, instantly transforming into a terrifying blade light, tearing through the sky, heading straight for the core of the destruction world source upon this level. If unwilling to cooperate, then seize this level of destruction world. Enough. The infinite snake ancestor's voice echoed, also showing a trace of helplessness. Losing to this Lord Luo Feng wasn't disgraceful. It's estimated that even Shoju might not compare to this Lord Luo Feng. Accompanied by its Sai, Luo Feng was originally rushing toward the shadow of origin. Suddenly 100 world envoys manifested in front, each burning with blue flames, collectively besieging Luo Feng. Hard words, yet practical actions. After only a few breaths exchanging blows with these world envoys, the insights gained at Mountain of Destruction were confirmed against reality, rendering these world envoys useless. Level 22 of the Abyss of Destruction. This level of the destruction world is all twisted and shattered, distorted into surging energy flows. Endless energy flows rotate around the peculiar cube known as Demon Ruins, sensing Luo Feng's presence from afar. He is here. Demon Ruins was incredibly expectant. He was born standing at the pinnacle of the endless primordial space, undying and indestructible. His close-range destructive power was considered the strongest. However, neither the ancestors nor the lords would foolishly engage him in close combat. His movement technique was weak, so his deterrence naturally fell short, occupying only the 22nd level of the Abyss of Destruction, far behind Shoju and Starlight. A figure traversed space-time to arrive. It was precisely Luo Feng. You are here. Demon Ruins emitted waves of excitement. Luo Feng observed his surroundings, this level of the destruction world already shattered and twisted around Demon Ruins. This scene reminded Luo Feng of the fourth sculpture in the Mountain of Destruction, an existence formed by 125 smaller cubes similar to Demon Ruins, which was far stronger than Demon Ruins in its methods, formidable in both close and ranged attacks, completely overpowering the current Luo Feng. Demon Ruins has potential, hopeful to evolve to the form of the fourth sculpture. Luo Feng thought, currently, his techniques are still too simple. After all, since its conception and birth, Demon Ruins' strength hasn't significantly improved. How should I cooperate with you? Demon Ruins asked with enthusiasm, shall we go one-on-one, or have world envoys attack you together? Either is fine. Luo Feng replied with a smile. He bore hostility with the infinite snake ancestor, yet harbored no enmity with Demon Ruins. Against such solitary, undying, immensely powerful beings, no faction would make an enemy of Demon Ruins. Ha ha ha, then let's go one-on-one first. The colossal cube of Demon Ruins unleashed terrifying waves, then roared and tore through the sky, carrying endless energy flows. This flight speed seemed incredibly fast, yet at the Lord and Ancestor level, it was considered a weak movement technique. The mighty ones like the Infinite Snake Ancestor and Feather Emperor are capable of being everywhere. Luo Feng, utilizing the power of the Blood Crane territory, could also change positions bewilderingly within short distances. Even Wulan, the slowest among the 8 lords, was slightly faster than Demon Ruins. Don't dodge, don't dodge. The massive cube attacked, filled with anticipation, it loved going head-to-head. If Luo Feng dodged, the confrontation would be too uninteresting. Draped in a blood-red robe, Luo Feng indeed stood firm, without moving a single step. Looking across the entire infinite primordial space, there wasn't a single life form that could force him to dodge. Luo Feng was also very curious, exactly how strong was the so-called near-supreme level destructive power. Boom! Hum? Luo Feng was carefully sensing as the tip of that giant peculiar cube collided with his protective energy layer. The protective energy layer, supplied by 1.08 billion origin energies, formed through the mysteries of the primordial life and death Tao. Further empowered by the power of the Blood Crane territory, it possessed characteristics of immortal and shadow. SSSSS tilde tilde tilde, as the tip touched the protective energy layer, it caused a depression, the sharpest point easily penetrated the layer. Then it contacted the blood-red robe, also piercing it, and stabbed into Luo Feng's skin and bones. This? Truly marvelous. Although he had engaged the fourth sculpture in Mountain of Destruction before, that sculpture no longer needed to use such foolish techniques. Luo Feng hadn't experienced such a pure method. The tip of that peculiar cube. Its sharpness even surpassed the theoretical limits of the infinite primordial space. That point possesses an unthinkable destructive force. Just speaking of one point, its terrifying destructive power surpasses dozens of ancestors working together. But it also has a fatal flaw. This sharp point is smaller than the theories of the endless primordial space. One must know Luo Feng's body is immensely large, a third of the size of a normal source world. Moreover, his entire body has no critical points. Thus, even if this smallest point pierces obstacles, the damage to Luo Feng remains lightweight. Despite having the point of unbreakable, the damage area is too small. Luo Feng stood there, the tip of the peculiar cube stabbed in, the edges sharp beyond compare, the overall power extremely strong, forcibly embedding into part of Luo Feng's body, yet ultimately becoming completely stuck. The attack dealt minimal energy loss, which Luo Feng immediately recovered from in an instant. Daring to go head-to-head with me, Luo Feng, I like opponents like you. Demon Ruins was unbelievably excited, his goodwill towards Luo Feng quickly surged. He had once fought against the Starlight Lord, yet the Starlight Lord stood right in front of him, unreachable and unharmed. Nor would the Starlight Lord foolishly go head-to-head with him. Shouju, transformed into endless flames, omnipresent, similarly avoiding head-to-head clashes. Luo Feng's strength was immensely powerful and could go head-to-head. Naturally, Demon Ruins was pleased. I also like opponents like you. Luo Feng rapidly comprehended Demon Ruins' breaking point strike, that point, unbreakable. It was because it was extremely small. Its sharp point is not matter, but a rule. In a point beyond the theoretical limit, no matter or energy can exist independently. Only a rule can exist there, forming an extremely destructive point. The rules of this point are the incredibly vast extreme point and destruction, two rules mysteries interweaving together. Luo Feng's primordial blade path also pursued the destructive power where all things can be cut, but it fell far behind compared to Demon Ruin's natural gift. Here I come. Demon Ruin's voice roared through the heavens and earth. He crashed back and forth, clashing with Luo Feng time and again. Luo Feng, too, initiated confrontations repeatedly, rapidly familiarizing himself with the opponent's destructive techniques. My extreme point is unbreakable, but it is too small. Even if the enemy is destroyed at one point, the injury is very minor. In battle with Luo Feng, the more Demon Ruins felt its own powerlessness. Kafu once told me he had seen a sculpture, and I could evolve toward that form. Split myself? Split into 125 of me? I've tried. Once split, each sub-body would be very weak, my strength declining instead of rising. Demon Ruins also pondered the way of evolution. Yet even with Kafu's help, knowing there is such a direction. But he still did not understand how to evolve in that direction. How to become more powerful after evolution. I understand. Luo Feng, who had long mastered the power of breaking, had accumulated profound experience in the primordial blade path. After repeated confrontations with the Demon Ruins, he finally glimpsed the sharp aspect of the secret of destruction. The reason Demon Ruins possessed such destructive power was that it inherently contained power of extreme point and power of destruction, making its power terrifying. And the power of extreme point also granted it the ability to be undying and immortal. It and the initial represent two extremes. However, for them to make any slight improvement is extremely difficult. Because their inherent power is already near perfect. What Luo Feng glimpsed was merely the mystery of destruction, and he couldn't grasp this innate technique of the Demon Ruins. After that glimpse, Luo Feng began experimenting with other techniques in the primordial blade path. The Demon Ruins, enjoying the battle, summoned 90 world envoys to jointly attack Luo Feng, yet even together they were still lacking. With Luo Feng's blade formation deployed, he could easily breach through those world envoys. Until suddenly, the Demon Ruins stopped, floating there as if in a daze. The world envoys continued their assault on Luo Feng according to previous orders. Seeing the opponent in a daze, Luo Feng did not disturb them. He took a step through space and time, breaking away from the world envoys and proceeding to the 23rd layer. This confrontation was within the expectations of the various forces in the endless primordial space. The flaw of the Demon Ruins was obvious, and no one believed it could rival Luo Feng. The 23rd, 24th, and 25th layers of the Abyss of Destruction. These are the layers that neither Yuan, Ice Peak Ancestor, Endless Snake Ancestor, nor the Demon Ruins could conquer in the Destruction world. Luo Feng traversed layer by layer, honing his blade technique, easily passing through these 3 layers to reach the 26th layer. This layer was where the Starlight Lord resided. Temporarily residing on the 26th layer, Luo Feng did not engage with Starlight, causing disappointment among many ancestors watching from afar. Land of Origin. Yuan, Jin, Wulan, Minghuang, Nai Jiyu, Starlight, and Mo Man, the 7 of them gathered to meet Luo Feng. Luo Feng. Yuan smiled, do you need opponents now? There's no need for our sparring among lords to be known to the outside world. Starlight smiled, the 7 of us will accompany you one by one. Jin looked at Luo Feng, I want to see whose destruction path is stronger, yours or mine. The lords were well aware of each other's capabilities. They all knew Luo Feng became a lord through the primordial life and death Dao focused on life. Then, the easiest second path for Luo Feng at the primordial level must be the pathway focused on destruction. Among us 7, I became a lord the latest. Mo Man smiled, let me go first. Luo Feng smiled, thank you, everyone, I will not refuse. While roaming in the Abyss of Destruction, he hadn't confronted any lord in battle. Yet, in reality, lords mastered at least one primordial level Dao, making them the most masterful in combat skills. Thus, in the Land of Origin, Luo Feng and the 7 lords maintained only 10% energy reserve, competing one after another. These confrontations made Luo Feng feel the threat brought by each primordial Dao the others wielded. Though in terms of energy reserves, the others were far inferior to Luo Feng, the lords surpassed Luo Feng in their areas of expertise. These engagements tested the primordial blade path from various aspects. Luo Feng's understanding deepened significantly, and he became extremely clear on what kind of primordial blade path he desired. The 26th layer of the Abyss of Destruction. Luo Feng, sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes to see the distant Starlight Lord. If you wish, you should be able to establish the primordial blade path, right? Starlight Lord looked at Luo Feng. Yes, I can establish the primordial blade path at any time. Luo Feng nodded in acknowledgement. During the battles with the Seven Lords, he had an overwhelming urge to establish the primordial blade path. But I have one more battle. Luo Feng looked towards the deeper Abyss of Destruction. After the battle with Shou, it will be the most suitable time to establish the primordial blade path. Starlight nodded in agreement with a smile. I am setting off now, Luo Feng said, and with a step, he headed to the 27th layer. Shou will be the last opponent in this training, also the one with the most terrifying destructive power and breaking power. And at this moment, the eyes of more than 200 ancestor-level and lord-level beings in the entire endless primordial space pierced through space and time, unwilling to miss this battle. This episode is end here.